Alright, this video is going to cover how to replace the FEP film on the bottom of the vat. This one here has a little bit of damage. This is most likely from using a scraper too aggressively or having debris on the table. But otherwise, if this happens, you'll get repeated failed prints in this area of the vat. The way to replace it is pretty simple and straightforward. There's a ton of Allen keys on the back of the FEP, and so you're just going to set it down, take all of those off, and then you'll be able to remove the FEP. The important thing is to make sure that the FEP is clean, that way you're not touching it, but obviously wear your gloves, and I will come back as soon as we're done taking all these out. Okay, I've gone through on most of them. I've left these last two just to show you, but I did want to point out it is a good idea to have a cup or a bowl or something nearby to put all these screws in, because there are quite a few of them. So I'm just going to go through, grab all those, and toss them in the cup here.
One eternity later.
These are not held in with a crazy amount of force, and as such, when replacing them, they don't need a lot of force. It's pretty light on the tension. Okay, with all screws being out, you should be able to remove. It might be a little stuck depending on how many cycles the FEP's been through, but if you push down, generally speaking, you can get your nail underneath and pull it out. So it kind of acts like a gasket, and as you can see again here in the middle, it's a little better with the light, that it can, these dents are what's causing the failed prints. FEP is relatively thin and easy to puncture, and as put a pretty decent little mountain in there, and that was not a lot of pressure. So when working with the FEP, make sure that you're not using too much pressure, especially when scraping off the old stuff. Now, the way that this printer works is on this back side here, we have even more screws to take out. So we're going to go through, take all of those out, and then I will come back as soon as these have all been removed. And I've done all of them. I've already removed them except for this one. Do keep in mind that this second set of hex heads is smaller than the first one. They are also different screws. So I have separated them out. These are the first ones we removed, and then we have the second ones here. So we're just going to remove this last one. Again, this is virtually no pressure at all. Should be incredibly easy to remove. And if it's not, then something else is awry. So let's go ahead and put that. Hard to pick up with the gloves. Put that away. And so with that, this first metal piece comes off. And there's your old FEP. It's just weird plastic. So go ahead and just throw this away. I wouldn't recommend holding on to it. It has no purpose. And then we will move on to the new one. So the new one's going to come in a tube like this from Anycubic. Generally speaking, you want to stick with the brand's original FEP. If you should need to, for any reason, get different FEPs, say they no longer sell this or something, as long as the size is correct, you can always calibrate the printer to be compatible with whatever FEP you're running. So let me get that out of the way. And then just be sure to read the manual. It's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is, just to remember how to build this, we need to put it all back together without the FEP. So this was the bottom and this was the top. I sandwiched it like that. Okay. And then it went on to the vat, like so. Because the FEP film is directional, it is paramount that we set it up the correct way. So it needs to go in like that. And so the blue smooth side, according to the instructions here, put the new film in between the two steel rings with the matte surface downward, and then install screws. So, because the screws, all those little ones, go on this side, the matte surface, the side that is not covered with the blue, goes downward. Maybe put this back. Okay, so this is the lower half. Oops, and this is the upper half. You can tell which side is which by looking at the size of the hole. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus. Size of the hole. So that is the smaller screw. Come on. There we go, smaller. And this one, by comparison, is quite a bit larger. So this is the last layer to go in. This is the first. We are going to take our FEP, and you don't need to be super duper careful, but as with everything 3D printer related, a tender hand and a light touch is generally well rewarded. So I've removed and the matte side is facing down. So generally try to line up the outside edges. Might be a little hard to see, but try to make sure that it's even on both sides, top and bottom. And then you can take your FEP gasket or metal bracket. We're going to set it back on top. It is directional. So make sure that these notches here, 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 and here and here, let's do it like that, line up. That way it actually slots back in correctly. So now we're going to take all of these little guys and screw them back in. It is going to feel weird because these screws are puncturing through this sheet. And that's just how it provides tension. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so we're going to cut and we'll be right back. One thing that I thought of while I was doing this is it's kind of similar to changing your tire, where you ideally want to go in a star-ish pattern. This is not a circle. It's not easy to do a star. So I started with this one here. So now I'm going to do the opposite one all the way around. And again, this is not needing a whole lot of tension. So basically just tight and then just maybe like a quarter turn at most. As long as it's flush, you can't feel the screw sticking up, then you're a-okay. If the screw or the bracket make any noise, then you probably went a little bit too tight. It's not going to hurt anything, but maybe just don't go so tight on the rest of them. So now I'm going to keep going in my star pattern. So again, started here to here. I'm going to do this one next, back over there, so on and so forth, until all screws are put back in. Okay, with all of the screws back installed, and I did take off my glove because I washed this. I want to make sure I can't feel anything out of place. Everything feels good. Everything's nice and level. So what you're going to do now is grab your vat. We're going to do a test fit. And again, this is directional. So these screws face the inside of the vat. So towards this red gasket looking element here. Excellent. Good fit. So now you're going to swap again to that slightly larger hex head. And now we're going to do the same thing. Star pattern, let's put all these back in. And then once they're in, you can take a razor blade or a pair of scissors and trim the rest of this film out of here. Okay, cool. I'm going to do that and we'll be back. Let's also quickly talk about how this feels to insert. So when you're doing one of the screws in a corner, for example, it's not going to thread into anything for a second because it has to puncture through. So with just a little bit of downward pressure, you'll be able to punch right through the FEP and screw it in. Now do notice that as I'm doing this, it's pushing the film down against this inner lip. And that inner lip is what's providing us the tension we need to make sure that minis don't stick to it. So again, just all the way tight and then just a smidgen more. 1/8 of a turn, maybe. And I would highly advise not going too tight so that the next person who has to do it doesn't end up hating you or thinking that something's wrong. And especially under no circumstances do we ever apply Loctite to something like this. This is intended to be replaced. It's supposed to be easy to replace, and Loctite would just really make that far more difficult. All right, so once everything's been installed, you're just going to take an X-Acto knife and run it along the inside edge of the vat there, just to trim off this excess. That way it's not interfering with any of the print functionality. It is going to be a little bit messy. That's okay. It does not need to be perfect, just as close as you can get. And I won't lie to you, this process does kind of hurt your wrist from all the twisting. So if you have an electric screwdriver, you can use that, but make sure that its clutch is turned as almost as low as it'll go. That way you're not just sending these relatively weak screws into, again, relatively weak metal, causing either cross-threading or just stripping out the screw altogether.